Welcome to the first ever episode of the CIHC, Central Illinois Hockey Central. That is what we are going to call this podcast, because since we're in Central Illinois, we mainly talk about either Illinois State or the Blackhawks, and I mean, that's not really Central Illinois, but whatever. Central Illinois Hockey Central sounded like a good name. The CIHC, I thought, sounded pretty good. So that's what we're going to name this podcast. Pretty solid, and we'll start with the Blackhawks here, as they had 5 games that have happened since we've last talked. Since we recorded this episode, our last episode, on Monday the 3rd, so the Blackhawks game had not concluded yet while we were recording that. And since there was that game, we had a game yesterday, since we're recording this one late, so we've had 5 games, and the Blackhawks have won games. I know it's a shocking revelation, but the Blackhawks have won games, and I don't know if it's a coincidence that Seth Jones is gone and we started winning games. I don't want to...
Oh, Dylan, you're playing with fire. You know how I feel about this.
Yeah, I know. But, the results are pretty undeniable. We've gone... what is this? We've only lost in regulation once in the past 5 games. And that was this yesterday against the Avalanche, who are a contender now with their deadline moves. Absolutely. And 3 of those games went to overtime. So we'll start with the first game against the Kings, a 5-1 win for the Blackhawks, and Ryan Donato, masterclass once again. Goal and an assist, 2 points. Mikheyev had a goal and assist too. Tavo with 2 points. Heck, Andreas Athanasiou had a point. He's been sent down to Rockford now because, I personally am fine with that. I don't dislike Andreas, but he has not been the greatest this year. But it was just point night for the Hawks. Reichel had an assist. Martinez had a goal. Maroon. Ethan Del Mastro. Oh my gosh, that Ethan Del Mastro goal was just... He's going to be so good. And honestly,
Very good.
I was kind of high on Del Mastro. I thought he was going to be pretty good. But with how good he's been on the Hawks so far since being called up, he might be the next Vlasic. Which, I don't want to jump the gun on that, but here's the thing. We only need him to be a bottom-pairing defenseman. Our defense is stacked. I've talked about this before, but Korchinski is 20. People have been giving him crapping, he only has half a point a game in the AHL, and he was supposed to be this offensive producer. He's 20 years old. Give him a little bit of time. He was an AHL All-Star this year. He was the AHL All-Star MVP this year. Give him some time. He's going to be the power play quarterback. And then you have Levshunov, which I'll get to him in a second, but Vlasic obviously already is a top pairing defenseman right now. Ethan Del Mastro, as I just said, has been fantastic. So you have Korch, Vlasic, and Ethan Del Mastro all on that left side, and then on the right side you have Levshunov, as I just mentioned. You have Sam Rinzel, who has been killing it for Minnesota and is still doing fantastically. He's their number 1 defenseman. He's going to sign at the end of the year along with Moore, and I'm excited to see what he can do. And then your only spot you need to fill is your bottom pair right-hand D, which can go from Nolan Allen, who's been solid this year when he was on the Hawks. You have Wyatt Kaiser, who's been playing in a solid role so far this year with the Hawks. You have Louis Crevier. You have a lot of guys who can go on that bottom pair. And that's your number 6 defenseman. So your defense core is stacked, and you really see that with Ethan Del Mastro producing now already. And it's just, I love to see it. They win that first game 5-1 against the Kings. The second game was a loss, but in overtime to the Senators. And, it's an overtime loss. It's not super fun, but it was close. They both scored 2 goals in the first. The Senators went up in the second, and we tied it up in the third.
I'd rather see them put up a fight like that and still get a point.
Absolutely.
I feel like last year, it was just as soon as we got up or down by 2 goals,
it was over.
All right, we lose, right? But this year they're showing fight and they're
Here's a stat that I saw
improvement, dare I say.
yesterday. Oh, no, they have. Here's a stat that I wanted to bring up because I still see people clowning on the Hawks, and I'm like, they have gotten better. They're not great this year still. Like, let's be real here. They're still bottom feeders in the league right now, but last year they were shut out 12 times. This year they have been shut out once, and that was yesterday against the Avalanche, which I'll get to why they were shut out in a second, but, like... So you lose in overtime to the Senators. Okay, whatever happens. They're in a playoff push, so it's a little more understandable why they're going to like push maybe a little bit harder than a team that's not going to make the playoffs in the Hawks. Right. Then you go against Utah, and that game was fantastic. Oh my gosh. You go up, or you go down by 1 in the first. You score 3 in the second to go up 3-1, and then you let them come back in the third. And you think of this team we were just talking about last year, it would have been over. You let them come back in the third, it's over. It's just, they're not going to win. Blackhawks win in overtime. And, it's just a Connor Bedard game winner in overtime was just...
Nothing is better than Connor Bedard.
Music to my ears. Music to my ears.
You can crap on Connor Bedard all you want and say that he's having a down year, whatever. I do not care. That kid is crazy, and he's better at hockey than you ever will be. Oh, yeah. I don't want to hear it.
Oh, man, dude, it was so funny to see so many people still trash on Bedard. He's like, oh, generational, yada, yada. Nathan MacKinnon is the best player in the league right now, and that's kind of not even debatable. Like, I would say McDavid, obviously, but MacKinnon leads the league in points right now.
Shout out to him, too. I think he just got his 1,000th point.
Did, yesterday. He just got his 1,000th point. I might as well talk about that. The last game was the Predators' 3-2 loss. All 3 goals were scored by Steven Stamkos, which, again, that's kind of like one where it's like, okay. He had been on a slump for a while, so, a star player getting out of a slump and scores a hattie, ending in OT, it's fine. Again, it's a team that's a bottom feeder. I'm not going to complain. Then yesterday, they did lose 3-0 to the Avalanche, but that last goal was an empty net goal, and honestly, it should not have been a shutout for the Hawks. Scott Wedgwood went absolutely nuclear in that game. Oh my
that save gosh. I didn't see the Foligno one, but that save against Bedard.
He was down and out, just throws it up and blocks it.
That's a save of the year candidate.
Oh,
no doubt.
Both of them were. The Foligno one, I don't know if you saw that, but he goes all around. It was so similar to the Spencer Knight save. Do you remember the one that was just a little bit ago? Same thing where he wraps it around, he goes on his side and just sticks out his glove, barely able to clip it, and grabs it out of there. And you could just see Foligno go, oh.
Like, gosh darn it, man. I thought I had a goal right there.
Yeah, dude, so those 2 goals, which under 99% of circumstances are goals, then it's 2-2. And not even the fact that both of those goals would have been scored earlier in the game than those 2 goals were scored by the Avalanche. So the whole game is different at that point if those 2 go in. So that win, obviously Nate Dogg getting his 1,000th point. Good for Nathan MacKinnon. I'd say right now in the league, Nathan MacKinnon is the best. If you watch that game against the Blackhawks, Nathan MacKinnon is unstoppable. He's unreal. And no shade to McDavid. Like, this is not like me saying, like, oh, McDavid's not the best player in the league anymore. He's still probably, like, from a skill perspective, the best player in the league. I'm just saying, who is playing the best right now? Nathan MacKinnon. And that's something that you cannot, like, ignore, especially going into playoff time. So I'm really excited to see what Nathan MacKinnon can do, because he's just had an insane year. He's had an insane 2 years. Honestly.
Obviously, we're Hawks fans, but I have to admit, I was, like, probably more excited than I actually should have been for him. But I was just really happy for him because he had that first point that they scored, the goal. I can't remember who scored it, but got taken away on the offside call.
That was Natchez.
And
which, speaking of which,
I was like, dang, man, he could have had that 1,000th point.
And got it later. He got it later. No, I also want to talk about Natchez a little bit, because watching that team click, because I haven't watched the Avalanche since the Rantanen trade. Rantanen is really good. He is a superstar in this league. We'll talk about that in a second. But I think Natchez fits the Avalanche so much better than Rantanen does because he's that speedy, skilled winger right now with McKinnon. And Rantanen was that big body that could get into the boards and stuff, and that's definitely needed on a team like that. But you pair Necas's speed and skill with Nathan McKinnon, there was nothing the Hawks could do to stop that game. Like it was ridiculous. They got a goal called back for that. Like those two, I feel like come playoff time, I am scared. And especially if the first round matchup might be the Avs versus the Jets again. And the Jets are the best team in the league right now. And I wouldn't even be surprised if they lost in the first round again if they go against the Avalanche because they're just that good right now. They're on another level.
That would be insane too because I don't know the exact numbers on it because I'm not a numbers guru, but I want to say that Connor Hellebuyck is probably, if not the best, top 3 goaltender in the league this year.
Oh, this year he's the best.
So
I mean, he's been the best goalie for the past couple years. Honestly,
that's gonna be one heck of a matchup to watch.
Nathan McKinnon and Martin Necas versus Connor Hellebuyck. Oh, and now they got Brock Nelson too. But I heard a ton of people complaining about the Brock Nelson trade. They don't know how good Brock Nelson is. I'm sorry. They're gonna find out. He is great defensively. He is a multi-35 goal scorer in this league. Like, that's nothing to scoff at. A 30-goal scorer is a offensive juggernaut when it comes to the NHL. And he's done it over 35 multiple times. Like,
I just have to laugh at people who make accusations like that.
I don't know. Brock Nelson is just like, he's a hitter. He's 6'4", so he's not like a small forward. He's a great shot. Like, he's who I want Sasha Boisvert to be in the Hawks prospect system right now. Brock Nelson is who I want Boisvert to be, which is, I mean, there's some good comparisons. Boisvert's a similar height. They both went to North Dakota. I'm not saying Sasha Boisvert is going to be Brock Nelson, but could he be a Brock Nelson light that we play on our third pair? Absolutely, and I would love that. So we'll have to see. I'm excited for the Avalanche. They have a stacked team right now going into the playoffs, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see what those teams can do. Moving on from just those 5 games from the Blackhawks, looking at the future, I mean, we'll check. I'll check the standings right now, but I know that they're second to last, and they're pretty far below the Predators right now. They're about 6 points behind, while the Predators have 2 games in hand. So they're likely not going to catch the Predators. I mean, the Predators are also on a 3-game win streak. So, I mean, if they can keep that up, they definitely won't be. So, hopefully the Hawks can stay at that number 2 spot. Personally, I really hope they stay in at least second or first worst in the league, purely because even if they get second worst, and even if the lottery screws them over, the farthest they could fall is 4th overall. And when looking at this draft, there is a bona fide top 4 comparatively to everybody else. And I'm pretty sure I've talked about it before on other podcasts, or on the other podcast, but 1, Michael Misa, who is putting up better numbers than John Tavares or other first overall picks, so he's really good. Matthew Schaefer, who is a defenseman in the same style of a Quinn Hughes or Lane Hudson, and you can see how good those guys are. Like, I don't think the Hawks necessarily need him, as they have, again, we talked about an insane decor, but, you know, I'm not going to deny a Quinn Hughes. Like, if it's like a Quinn Hughes, Lane Hudson-esque player, I'm not going to say, oh, no.
Won't take him.
Exactly. He's probably the one that I would want the least out of the 4, but I'm also very much assuming that another team is going to take him. Like, personally, if I'm the Sharks GM, if I'm Mike Greer right now, he's my number 1 target, because you have Sam Dickinson. I think Sam Dickinson's good, but I don't know if Sam Dickinson's a future number 1. I think Sam Dickinson's more like a number 2, like a good number 2, but a number 2. So you pair him with someone like Matthew Schaefer, or have him on the second line on the left side with Matthew Schaefer on the top line, and your decor is really good for the future then for the Sharks. So personally, I think that's who they're going to go for if I was Mike Greer, mainly because the other top players are centers, and you don't need a center as the Sharks, who have Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith right now. And even if you move Will Smith to the wing, I don't think you need one of those as your second line center if you have somebody like Will Smith. I guess you could argue the same thing for the Hawks with Nazar and Bedard, but I would say Nazar would also definitely work as a winger. And even then, put someone like Michael Misa or the other one I haven't mentioned yet, James Higgins. I mean, James Higgins is the next U.S. Great. He's not going to be as good as Austin Matthews, someone like that, but I do think Will Smith is going to be better, or James Higgins is going to be better than Will Smith. So you're just going to have to wait and see, honestly. But those three, and then the fourth one is Porter Martone. And he isn't necessarily as skilled as those other three, but the reason why he's in that grouping with the other three is because of he's the Brady Matthew Tkachuk kind of guy. He plays that kind of game. He hits hard. He hits consistently. He's going to be that guy who gets in your face and does all that stuff along with being incredibly skilled. So every team, especially come playoff time, wants one of those players. So I'm not going to complain if I get Porter Martone. Do I think Michael Misa and Connor Bedard would be unstoppable, and do I really want to see that? Yes. But if we get 4th overall and get Porter Martone, I'm not going to be like, oh no, I'm going to be like, sweet, we're going to be really good in the playoffs now.
I was just about to ask you, because I feel like in my head, when I look at the championship teams of the Hawks, we've never, in my opinion, really have been known as getting in your face, physical team. We're usually built on smaller skill guys. So
a little bit. I mean, it's hard to say because obviously the game has evolved since 2010, 2015, since we last won our cups. But I'm thinking of Brian Bickle, Dave Bolland. Those are guys who would get in your face and play the meaner game. And then people forget how mean Dunks was in the playoffs. He got a couple suspensions for how much stuff he did. I mean, it's just been a decade now, so I can't blame him really. But Duncan Keith was a menace, and Brent Seabrook would beat the crap out of you if you touch someone like Kaner.
So I feel like maybe most people just maybe paid attention to Kane and Taves
because they were the flashy players.
That was the heartbeat of our team, but
exactly. But I don't know.
I'd be interested. I think it is a good thing though that you said that they're the bona fide top 4, because if I'm Kyle Davidson, that makes my job really easy.
Oh yeah,
because
I
just watch what the top 3 teams do, or wherever we fall, and I get my pick of whoever's left of that.
Yeah, exactly. So anywhere in the top 4. If you get higher, I'll be happy. I'd love to take... My personal rankings are Michael Misa, James Higgins, Matthew Schaefer, and then Porter Martone in that order. However, if I'm 3, I'd take Martone over Schaefer purely because of our D-core, though I heavily doubt he's going to be there at 3 because, again, he's that top bona fide defenseman. And even look at the NHL this year, the trade deadline, a bottom pair defenseman was getting a 2nd round pick because that's just how much defense is needed in the NHL right now, which is why I love how Kyle Davidson has brought this team. He's brought it from the back end up. You look at someone like literally the Sharks, and they have a pretty fun offense, honestly, right now. They don't have bad offense. They have Tyler Toffoli, they have William Eklund, they have Will Smith, Macklin Celebrini. Their offense is not that bad. The problem is their defense. The Blackhawks have the opposite issue. I mean, they have a really young defense, so it's not perfect yet, but you already see the youth movement on the defense.
They got Spencer Knight back there.
Oh, can we talk about how good Spencer Knight's been so far? Man.
I think the way that Davidson's building it, I agree with you, I would much rather see Bedard, quote-unquote, struggle and not have any help around him. Because if you can solidify, and I think this goes for any sport. I mean, if you compare it to football, how do you build a football team? You build the offensive and defensive line first.
Exactly.
You don't do what the Bears did and get every other skill position, and then your trenches are terrible, and then you still lose half, the majority of your games. It's you gotta build the trenches up first, and that's what they've done. I guess, maybe you'd call defense the trenches in hockey? I have no idea. Point is,
it's the same.
It's from the back end up.
You build it the same way, and I think some teams try to do it differently, and I just think over the years, it's been proven that you have to build, in each sport, whatever, compare it, but you have to build from the back end up in hockey. Because if you don't have good goaltending, guess what? You're just never going to win because eventually your offense is not going to score that much.
Well, that's the thing that I'm so excited about the Hawks prospect pool, because now with the Spencer Knight trade, again, we already talked about how insane our defense core is now because of, we have multiple NHL, we're going to have so many NHL talented defensemen that we're going to have to trade one because we just can't put them all on the roster. And Korchinski, Vlasic, Rinzel, Levshunov. I'm going to talk more about Levshunov in just a second, but I want to talk about Spencer Knight first because, oh man, am I excited about that future core. Oh man. Arvid Soderblom has been disrespected a lot, and deservedly so last year, but this year he has been great. And him, along with Spencer Knight, they're both under 26. So you're going to have those two. If you choose to re-sign those two, you're going to have those two for possibly the next decade. It's very exciting times. And then that doesn't even bring up someone else I'm going to talk about, and we talked about last week with Drew Comesso, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll start with my prospect corner, because that's what I wanted to start with Levshunov. He had his NHL debut yesterday against the Avalanche. And listen, I was very much expecting Levshunov to not have a great game. And that's okay. And I was okay with that. He's 19. He was the second youngest player in the entire AHL. All right. I was expecting it he's going to be really good in the future. He's probably going to struggle in this game. It's against the Avalanche.
By the way, you got to defend against Nathan McKinnon.
Oh, yeah, just defend, literally the best player in the league right now. It's no big deal. Oh, which, by the way, just added a ton of players at the trade deadline. Yeah, just go on. You'll be fine. I love that Kyle Davidson just said, nah, throw him to the fire. You're going to play in the NHL? There. This is what you're going to have to play against. And I was so pleasantly surprised on how good Levshunov did. I was very much expecting a lot of mistakes, a lot of out-of-position plays, because that's kind of how Levshunov is. He kind of goes out of position and tries to score and stuff, and, that's what part of the appeal of Levshunov is, that he does things that other defensemen necessarily wouldn't or maybe even shouldn't do, but he's able to do that. That's part of the reason why we drafted him. He does things that other defensemen don't do, but it can cause him to be out of position sometimes. So I was expecting him to be a -3 or something like that and not have a good game, but to get his first taste in the NHL. And I was completely wrong. He looked like one of the most steady defenders on there. He was thrown onto the power play immediately and was better than Vlasic was, honestly. And I love Vlasic. He's had a little bit of a rough patch of recently, but I'm not worried about Vlasic. He's great. Pickles is awesome. It's just, for him to immediately go in, have power play time and everything, and just succeed. He had over 20 minutes of ice time yesterday in his first game against the Avalanche, and he looked pretty darn good in all of those minutes as a 19-year-old.
That'll just show you, too, how much confidence that not only Davidson has in him, but, I think, oh my God, why can't I think? Anders Sorensen. He coached him in Rockford.
Yeah.
So, he knew what he had to give, right, in what to bring to the Hawks. So, I think it was probably easier for Sorensen to give him the go. But, good for Davidson to just put his trust into our younger guys, because if you don't trust them, you're not going to play them. And if you're not going to play them, they're not going to grow.
He's just been so good in that first game. It's, as a 19-year-old, you talked about Sorensen having trust in him, good. If you can, if you can do that as a 19-year-old, imagine how good this guy is going to be when he's 23. Because most defensemen don't make the league until 20 years. He has 4 years of runway for that. And not only that,
this kid's going to be nuts.
Yeah, exactly. Not only does he have 4 years of runway, but the whole thing with Levshunov, the whole thing that I personally thought when I was watching him and do his stuff, the biggest thing with Levshunov that was a plus was that he learned things very quickly. He went from the Belarusian League to the USHL to the NCAA to the AHL, all within 1 year hops, which is an insane jump to continue to make and continue. And each of those years, he struggled in the beginning, started to learn and got really good by the end of the year. Now he's already good as an AHL defenseman. He's already Rockford's number 1 down there as a 19-year-old, and he can, if he's already showing promise in the NHL and he learns that fast and he has 4 years of runway until he's supposed to be in the NHL.
I think that's an underrated thing that you bring up because, like, I feel like that's like probably the biggest struggle that minor leaguers have is going from the AHL to the NHL. You usually see them struggle. If we can get a guy like Levshunov who learns, like you said, really, really fast, he's not going to struggle that much because he's going to be able to adjust. And that's going to be really, really important for such a young D crew.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I know everybody that year wanted Demidov, and I get it. But all I'm saying is, why are people not giving the Ducks or the Blue Jackets flack? Like, I don't get it. Like, Bennett Seneca has been okay in the OHL. He's been really good. Has he been number 3 overall good? I don't know. Caden Lindstrom hasn't played since he was injured in his draft year. He's still out and probably is going to miss this full season. So I'm not saying that's a bad pick. Obviously, you don't know what he's going to do until he comes back from injury. But, like,
surely doesn't help or make him look good.
Exactly. It feels much more like another Hawks bias thing, because I get it. Nobody really likes the Hawks. They won 3 cups in 6 years. Everyone's pissed off by them, and they don't want to deal with them again. I don't blame you. I don't want to see the Tampa Bay Lightning be good right now, like, after they just won their cups. Like, I understand where that's coming from, but, like, at the same time, maybe start clowning some other franchises other than just the Hawks, as they seem to have gotten a really good player with that pick and someone who's going to solidify their D for a long time. Pause. But I'm sorry, Mike. I'm losing it here.
Dylan.
Someone who's going to solidify their D core for the next 10 to 20 years. But
don't take anything that Dylan says seriously, guys.
Yeah,
that's rule number 1.
Yeah, no, I need some sleep, I guess. I don't know what's going on with me, but whatever. But yeah, to have someone like that comparatively to like Bennett Seneca, like, I'd take Demidov over Seneca and Lindstrom in a heartbeat. With how good Levshunov was in that first game, I don't know if I take him over him anymore. Honestly, I don't know. I'm going to have to see the runway, but at the beginning of the year, I was still like, no, Demidov's definitely better. Now, with how good he was in his first game, I'm like, maybe Levshunov's better. Like, maybe Demidov is the better, like, point producer and player, but right-handed defensemen are a lot more rare than skilled wingers. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying, is it's a lot easier to find a skilled winger than a right-handed defenseman. Why do you think Seth Jones got so much back in return, even when he's been the nuisance he's been? Like,
don't know, but that was fine with me, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, did you actually see the Nick Foligno quote recently, where he talked about, like, we've had like a lot of distractions recently, but we've like moved those out. And I'm like, wow, Nick, really subtle there, really
subtle.
Wonder
who you're calling out there, buddy.
Wonder who you're talking about. Oh man,
that was crazy.
But point is, Levshunov has been great in his first game. We'll go over a few more prospects before we end the first episode of the CIHC here today. One that I'll bring up once again. We bring it up every week at this point, but he keeps doing stuff. So Nick Lardis, we're talking about him again. I remember it was not that long. I mean, this podcast has only been going on for 7 weeks. This is the 7th week of it. I remember the first couple weeks. I think it was like episode 2 or something. I talked about, man, Nick Lardis might be able to reach 60 goals. He hit 70 this past
Blew
week.
That out of the water. Quick note, just so there's no confusion. If you want to catch up on all of the other conversations that we've had with Hawks and other stuff, check out the Sin Bin podcast.
Correct.
Episodes 1 through 6. That will kind of catch you up on the conversations we've had, just so there's no confusion.
Absolutely.
Going to continue.
But yes, he had another good weekend and now has 70 goals and 43 assists for 113 points in 61 games. 70 goals. He is, I just want to let you know the last 2 players who had 70 goals in the OHL. John Tavares and Eric Lindros. Those were the last two players to get 70 goals in the OHL. Now, am I saying that Nick Lardis is going to be one of those guys? No. John Tavares was 16 when he did that, and Eric Lindros was, I think, 17? Nick Lardis is 19. So, context with stats. However, that's still insane that he's putting up these numbers in the OHL. So, Nick Lardis is just going off. 70 goals, and he still has 5 more regular season games left in the OHL. So,
all right, let's hear your prediction in the last 5. What do you think?
What do I think he ends the year on?
What do you think he ends with? What does he got right now?
70.
70?
I say
over or under 75.
Over. I say 76. That's my prediction. That's my prediction because I mean, like the last 3 games he's scored. Like, I'm looking at it right now. Last 5 games he has 7 goals. Last 10 he has 15. So he's averaging about a goal and a half a game. So even if that in absolutely ridiculous pace slows down, which admittedly it probably will, I wouldn't be surprised if he has another Hattie in there and then just scores 1 goal in 3 more games. Doesn't have a goal in the last game, and then there you go. He has 76 on the season. I think 76 is a pretty good prediction for Nick Lardis. But either way, he already broke the Bulldogs record for goals in a season. He broke the point record in a season as well this year.
Might as well give him every other record.
Exactly. He's just going off, dude. And I remember when he was drafted 3rd overall, man, I feel a sense of catharsis right now. Like I was talking about Nick Lardis, and sure enough, now everybody's talking about Nick Lardis, and like it's on hockey pages, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's the first guy to hit 70 goals, and I'm like, I've been talking about this guy for years. Like, whatever. But it feels good to at least be somewhat right. We'll have to see what he does in the AHL and the NHL next year, but very exciting from Nick Lardis there. Hit 70 goals. Huge for him. A quick overview of Drew Commesso. I was going to bring him up again.
My man Commesso.
Commesso had a shutout on the weekend and then was the first star in the next game.
Let's go. See, okay, I'm just going to admit something. Before the Hawks got Spencer Knight, I was not high on Arvid Soderblom.
Oh, I mean, I wasn't either.
And I was all in on Drew Commesso, and I couldn't wait for Drew Commesso to get up to the NHL. I'm still excited for him, but I mean, we have Spencer Knight, but yeah, Drew Comesso's a dog.
Yeah. Yes, he is. Yeah. So I'm looking at it right near the last 2 games, March 7th, March 8th. He was against the Stars and the Wild, let in 2 goals across those 2 games.
Sheesh.
So, and then shut out the Wild, only let in 2 against the Stars, and was like the first star of that game. So, yeah, I'd say that Drew Commesso has been playing pretty darn good as of late. And remember, he's 22. He's still got plenty of runway as a goalie as well. I think he could absolutely be a starter in the league. And you have now a goalie core of him, Soderblom, and Knight. Forget about it. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing. Just wanted to shout out him for that good weekend he had. Lastly, Minnesota just got eliminated. Got upset in the Big Ten tournament.
Ooh.
So Rinzel and Moore, unfortunately, will not be advancing in the tournament. They will still make the Frozen Four, barring any crazy selections, because they were ranked like 3rd this year. So unless they entirely fall off a cliff, they should be... I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't make the Frozen Four, but it was upsetting to see them upset. But, I mean, I can't even really blame the Hawks guys. I mean, both of them had... Moore had a goal in the 1 game they won, and then both him and Rinzel had an assist in the 3rd game that they lost. And it's like, I mean...
They can only do so much. They're two people. Exactly.
It's 2 guys to the whole team. It takes a team. Snuggerud was playing pretty good too, but like a lot of the depth guys, someone like Brody Lamb, someone like Nevers. Don't get me started on the Minnesota goalie. I don't want to call anybody out, but dude, he let in a goal from center ice in the first game. It was like,
ooh,
dude,
that's bad.
Like their goalie has been holding them back kind of through the year. But you know what? I'm sure that they wouldn't appreciate me saying that, so I won't. I won't say that. Final prospect I'll go over is Sasha Boisvert. I was talking about him earlier in comparison to Brock Nelson. He ended the year scoring in 6 straight games.
Dang.
Not only that, but he made the NCHC, I think it is, his division. He plays for North Dakota, but I'm pretty sure he's in the NCHC. And he was named to the all-rookie team for the NCHC. So, pretty good. Pretty good for Boisvert. He's had a darn good year. He hits, he fights, he can score goals like nobody's business. I'm excited for him to come over. He's probably going to take another year, maybe 2, in North Dakota, but we'll have to see what his timeline is. But I'm excited for Boisvert. And again, we have all these guys forwards in the system. People say that we don't have a good forward core. We do. It's just that our defense and goalie core is so stacked that it makes our forward core look kind of like lower by default. But we still have Nick Lardis. We still have Sasha Boisvert. We still have Oliver Moore. We still have Roman Kanserov, who is, again, still killing it in the KHL. And then it doesn't even include someone like Bedard or Nazar or Slaggert or the Colton Dock or guys who are currently in the league. So
the timeline is just so different, I feel like.
Exactly.
Like, we're seeing a lot of our, not necessarily Comesso, but in our D-core, like, you're seeing a lot of the guys in our D-core either get called up and stay up or go up and down, but it's just the timeline for that in the forwards is just they're not lined up, which is okay.
Yeah.
But I think that's just something to keep in mind because, like you said, people are ripping on that Bedard doesn't have help. Well, he does, but they're just not there yet.
They're not yet, exactly. And especially with this draft, when you inevitably get, I'm assuming Schaefer goes 1 or 2, you get a very, very good forward like Martone, like Miso, like Hagens, and you plug that into what we already have. What we constantly say in the NHL, you need to win either a Stanley Cup or be a dominant team, is 2 elite forwards and 1 elite defenseman. Tampa Bay, when they did it, Victor Hedman, Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov. When the Avalanche won, Mikko Rantanen, Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar. Who won it this past year? The Florida Panthers. Gustav Forsling, I'd probably say, was their top, like their elite defenseman, though admittedly I'd say they kind of had separated out because they had Montour and Ekblad too, but elite I'd probably say with how good Forsling was on defense, I'd probably say he was their elite defenseman, and then elite forwards was Barkov, Tkachuk. Easy. Yep. So it seems like you need the 2 elite forwards and you need the elite defenseman. We have Levshunov, we have Bedard, you need that other elite forward, and this draft, Misa, Hagens, or Martone, I feel like are going to be that other elite forward that you really need to build your team up, and you select one of those in this draft, and I think, obviously the rebuild's not complete, but you can start prioritizing not winning now, but like not just future draft capital, if that makes sense. Kyle Davidson actually came out after this past deadline and said we're going to stop only going for draft capital because you've met it. You have the depth in the system. You just need that other high-end forward prospect.
Yep.
Other than that, you have the depth in forward. You have other really, really good forward prospects. You have the defense prospects, both high-end and middle. You have the goalie prospects in Comesso, and then you still obviously have Knight and Soderblom who are super young. We've been preaching it all year, but just have a little bit more patience. I know it's hard, but like, admittedly, until now, it's kind of been like you're in the tunnel and you can't see anything. Now, with Nazar killing it, with Levshunov killing it in his first game, with Knight showing out, with Bedard still struggling, but is Bedard, like, you see the light. You see the light at the end of the tunnel. You just need to get there. So,
and people are too quick to judge Davidson.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, absolutely.
Before we had all these, like, people did not like Davidson.
I've always been
admittedly,
a huge
I was not a fan of him. I was not a fan of him in the beginning, but I think we're starting to see his vision, and I think that's a common thing. I mean, I don't think we don't all think like a GM.
Yeah.
So you're quick to judge, but I think we're starting to see that vision, like you said, and it's all coming together, which I think is going to start to bring a lot of people more fans of Davidson.
Exactly.
If they're not already.
I'm not gonna lie. I've always been a fan of Davidson. I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I've always really liked Davidson. I wasn't a fan of him when he first got hired because he was part of the whole Stan Bowman regime, and I wanted to distance myself from that as far as humanly possible. But he's proven himself to be a great trader, a great evaluator of talent, and especially a good rebuilding GM right now and building through the draft and stuff like that. So I'm really excited for the Hawks' future. Last little recap thing here I'll do before we leave. I'll talk about ISU Roller a little bit because they went to, I think it's the U.S. Roller Cup is what it was called. I can't remember the tournament exactly, but they went to Georgia, went against a couple other NCRHA teams down there, beat Kennesaw State in the semifinals, and then lost to UT Chattanooga by 1 goal in the finals. So, that one's gotta hurt. But hey, it's great practice for Natties in April, and that's where it matters most. So I'm excited to see what they can do there. And hey, good weekend. I mean, I'm not going to complain. I mean, this team went from 0-16 a couple of years ago to now you're competing against teams going to Natties.
Can't ask for anything more.
Rather in other things. So exactly, you can't really ask for much more. I'm excited to see what they can do at Nationals this year, and best of luck to them as well. That should be about it. Not really anything ice for ISU related at this point in the year, and not many other teams to talk about. So that will wrap up the first episode of the CIHC podcast, the Central Illinois Hockey Central podcast. Thank you guys for joining us for this one. With these two podcasts will be separated from now on. So if you have been watching our previous episodes, just be wary of that. We did mention that in the last episode, but in case you were not aware, they will be separated now. But thank you for watching this episode, and we will catch you guys in the next one.